We begin today the Gemara on Daf Kuf Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, 6 lines down from the top of the Amud. It said in the Mishnah, Im yesh eidim shetavai harei ze nish bava metzia. So the Mishnah is talking about a person that claims that his employer never paid him. So the Mishnah said it depends when he's claiming this. If he claims it within the time that he's supposed to be paid, which is during the day or during the following night after he finished the work, so then if he swears that he wasn't paid yet, he's trusted that he wasn't paid yet. But if he comes later on, after that time period, and he claims, I still wasn't paid, then we're not going to trust him. The Gemara before explained, there's a chazakah that the owner did not want to be over on the Isser, and he probably paid him on time. This worker himself probably already demanded the money earlier. But then the Mishnah adds this line and says, if there are witnesses that he demanded the money from the employer, then even now, after the time, he can come and swear and collect the payment. So the Gemara asks on this, what does this mean? The gears of the Bachir, he's demanding the money now. What's the significance of the fact that there are Eidim that he once demanded the money? He's standing here right now and demanding that he did not get paid yet. So why should it be believed now more? Because he once had Eidim that he demanded the money before. What does that change? Ravasi explains what the Mishnah means to say is Shetavai Bizmanoi. He has Eidim that within the time when he's supposed to get paid, he came and demanded the money and the employer didn't pay him then. So therefore now, when he comes even after the time and says that I didn't get paid, we believe him because he has Eidim that he did demand the money then at the right time and he didn't want to pay him. Well, how does that prove anything? One second. Let's see what the Gemara asks. The Gemara asks a few questions on this. You have Eidim that you asked the money of him in the right time and he didn't want to pay you. But one time, Eidim just saw one time. Maybe sometime in the rest of the day, the employer did pay him. How do you know? Amar Abaye. So Abaye says, no, Shetovai calls mana. He has Eidim that the entire day at the time period, right? He has till Shkia. Let's say if he finished in the morning and then he can pay him all day. So he has Eidim that all day he was asking for the money and the Eidim were with him all the time and he didn't want to pay him all that time. So now if he comes after the time and he says that you didn't pay me yet, so then you can't say, he probably paid him in the right time because he doesn't want to be over on the lava of Baltolan. No, we have Eidim that entire time he didn't pay him. But the Gemara still is not happy with this. The Gemara asks, Ula oilam lai paralei? Does that mean that we're going to assume that the employer never pays him? Let's say it's already a week later, a month later, a year later. He can still come and say, because he has Eidim for those 12 hours when he was supposed to pay him, that he didn't pay him. So now, any time later, he can come and argue that he still didn't pay me? So the Gemara says, Chanami, he can't. Amar Abcham bar Ukve. Abcham bar Ukve explains what our Mishnah means is, Keneged oisa yayim shel tviyah. Only one day corresponding to that time. He says, look, there was the 12-hour period that he was supposed to pay me, and I have Eidim that for that entire 12-hour period I was demanding the money from him, and he didn't pay me. For the next day, he can come and claim that he didn't pay me yet, and we're going to believe him, and he's going to get paid. But once it's beyond that, once it's 2 days later, a week later, so then we say, why should we believe him that the owner did it, that the employer didn't pay him? Maybe afterwards there's more time, and maybe he did pay him. So the Mishnah meant only that one day afterwards could he come and say that he didn't pay him yet.
Why is he swearing?
So the Gemara explained before over here that he still has to swear. The Gemara before discussed it. Lahafiz daita shabalabais, because the balabas is standing and screaming and saying that I did pay you. So to appease him, he has to make a shvur. There's Eidim that he didn't pay him before. There's no Eidim that he didn't for sure pay him afterwards. We don't know 100%. But it's more likely. We have reason to believe that what he's saying is true, that he didn't get paid, so he can swear and collect it. But it's not 100%. Still, the balabas is standing and screaming that I did pay him, so he still has to make a shvur. Mishnah. Here, this Mishnah actually begins a new subject. This is the halachas relating to a person that's taking a mashkin, a collateral or a security, when he's not getting paid for his loan. Sometimes where the Gemara discusses a mashkin that a person takes at the time when the loan begins, that you only lend the money with a mashkin that you receive from the borrower. Here we're talking about a person that came to collect the money of the loan, and the borrower is not paying him, and he wants to take a mashkin then for this loan. A person that lent money to his friend. So now when he comes to collect the money and he's not paying, he should not take a mashkin ela bebezdin, only through bezdin. The person himself should not go and take a mashkin. And Rashi explains this is under no circumstances, whether he's taking the mashkin from him in the street or he goes into his house. We'll see soon. This is going to be one of the big discussions about the fact that you're not allowed to go into a person's house to confiscate an object of his. But either way, a mashkin should only be taken with a bezdin. Then the next halacha, v'lo yikonis lebeisai, you should not go into the borrower's house, litol mashkainai, to take this collateral. Shonem, as the pasuk says, bachutz tamoid, you stand on the outside. Okay, this the Gemara will discuss when it says v'lo yikonis, who should not go in. Does that mean either bezdin should not go in, or does it mean that a person privately that wants to take a mashkin should not go in? Okay, so that's one halacha beneged to the din of mashkin. Another halacha regarding a din of a mashkin is hayuloi shnei kelim. If a person, the borrower, has two different kelim, two different vessels, tools, or whatever it may be. So noitel echad maniach echad. Even if the value of your loan is as much as those two kelim, so you want to take both of those kelim as a mashkin. But still, you take one and you leave the other. Now, what does that mean, you take one and leave the other? Which it means like this. Even if you're going to take both as a mashkin, but nevertheless, the Mishnah here, according to Rashi's Pshat, the Mishnah goes on to explain how what you do here. Umachzer is a kar balayla. So let's say if one of the kelim you're taking is a pillow. But the pillow, though, you can't keep it during the night. During the night, you have to give him back the pillow to be able to sleep with it. And besamachresha, if the other keli you're taking is a plow, so then the machresha that you take from him, by yom, that you have to give him back during the day to be able to use it. So you're taking both kelim as a mashkin, but in the times when he needs it, you have to return it to him, whether by night or by day. Another halacha regarding a mashkin, v'im meis, if the borrower dies, ein a machzer liyoshav. The halacha of returning the mashkin for it to be able to be used in its time does not apply to the children, the yisayimim. It only applies to the borrower himself. Rashi brings it, the pasuk says, "Hashiv teshivim loy," only to the borrower himself, but not by the yarshim. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel says, "Af la'atzmai ein machzer el at shloshim yom." Even the borrower himself, you don't have to return to him the mashkin only within the first 30 days. But after that, if he still is not paying his loan, after 30 days, you can sell it in bezdin to get the payment for your loan. Talk to Gemara Shmuel. Shmuel said about the first halacha in our Mishnah, shliach bezdin. Even when you have the shliach of the bezdin that's coming and collecting this, taking this collateral, menateach netuchi. They can go and grab a mashkin from a person, from the borrower, when he's in the street and he has something valuable on him, and so the bezdin can go and approach him and take something from him for the lender in that place, outside in the street. So that yes, aval mashkuni loy, but to go into his house and to confiscate an object from in his house, that even the shliach bezdin is not allowed. Okay, so this halacha, it's the pasuk. It says in the pasuk b'chutz tamoid. This pasuk about chutz tamoid refers even to the shliach bezdin. So the Gemara asks on this. Now, based on, let's see the language of our Mishnah. What did the Mishnah say? Amal ves chaveira. If you lend money to your friend, lo yimashkenenu ela bebezdin, you should not take a mashkin only through a bezdin. Now, at this point, the Gemara understands the term yimashkenenu means when you take someone's object as a mashkin when you go into his house. You confiscate it from his house. You're not just grabbing it from him when he's walking in the street. So it says that you should not take the mashkin only through a bezdin. From the klal, it seems like the bebezdin memashkinen. With a bezdin, you could go into his house and take the mashkin. So this question on Shmuel. So Shmuel answered to this. No, you should understand the Mishnah. When it says that you only take a mashkin with bezdin, what it meant is lo yenatchenu ela bebezdin. Even to just grab something from a person when he's walking in the street, even that you shouldn't take a mashkin only with a bezdin. Now it's logical to say that that's how you understand what the Mishnah is saying. Why? Because the Ktan is safe. What does it say right away in the next thing in the Mishnah? Lo yikonis lebeisai little mashkainoi. Don't go into his house to take the mashkin. Now, Mani, who are we talking about when it says there, don't go into his house to take the mashkin? If we're talking about the person himself, the balchoiv, the lender, that he should not go into the house. I already understand it from the Reish of the Mishnah. Didn't the Mishnah say before that you should only take a mashkin with a bezdin? So if you're going to say that means that don't go into his house. So don't go into his house unless it's Bezdin. So then afterwards has to say again that the person himself should not go into the house. Elalav shliach Bezdin. What it's saying over here is like the pshat of Shmuel, that when you take a mashkin from someone, you could only take it from him when he's walking in the street. So you can grab something from him which is valuable. And even that shliach Bezdin should not take a mashkin, should not go into the person's house. That's the simple meaning of the Mishnah here, like what Shmuel said. But the Gemara answer is no. If it's because you're seeing the 2 points the Mishnah says, and that's how you read the Mishnah, like what Shmuel said, loy area. That's not necessarily a raya to what Shmuel says. Why? Because hachi kamar, you can read the Mishnah as follows. According to other gerses here, you have to say chsuri mechsri v'hachi katani, that you can read the Mishnah and say that there's words missing in the Mishnah, and you have to explain the Mishnah as follows. First, the Mishnah says hamalves chaveira lo yimashkenenu ela bebezdin, that if you lent money to your friend, do not later come and take a mashkin from him, only through a bezdin. Meklal de bebezdin memashkenen. But I could say that what the Mishnah is telling you is not like Shmuel, that if it's with a bezdin, you could take the mashkin, and the word mashkinenu means to go into his house and take the mashkin. And then the next case of the Mishnah is teaching me ubal choiv, and when it comes to the lender himself, afilin etuchi namiloi, he himself is not allowed to grab any object from the borrower, even if he's grabbing it from him in the street. And what's the reason? Because shelo yikanas lebeisa little mashkainei, in order that he shouldn't come to then go into his house and take the mashkin. In other words, what the Mishnah meant to say in the second case when it says v'lo yikanas lebeisa, what it's saying is that the lender himself should not take a mashkin from the borrower anywhere. Why? Because it's a gzeira of chachamim. What's the gzeira? If you're going to allow the lender to take a mashkin from the borrower when he meets him in the street, so then he may then come to go into his house to take the mashkin because he feels he has the rights. He owes me money, he's not paying me. If I'm allowed to take it from him in the street, he might end up going into his house. So therefore, he should not take a mashkin under any circumstances. Machenkin, the shliach of Bezdin, is allowed to go even into his house to take the mashkin. That's how you can read our Mishnah. So it's you can say the pshat of the Mishnah is not like Shmuel. So here the Gemara is going to bring different rayos to discuss this halach of Shmuel, that even the shliach of Bezdin is not allowed to go into the person's house to take the mashkin. Master Rav Yosef, so Rav Yosef asks from a brayse, the pasuk says, "Lo yachbo rechaim v'rechev." When you take a mashkin, you're not allowed to take the rechaim and rechev, which is the millstones. You have the bottom millstone, which is called rechaim, and the top millstone, which is called rechev. So those things you're not allowed to take as a mashkin. We'll see later in the Gemara. Anything that's used for nefesh, for what a person needs for his livelihood, to live, to eat. So you're not allowed to take that as a mashkin. So what do we understand from this? Other things that are not this millstones, you are allowed to take as a mashkin. Another thing, it says in the pasuk, loitachpoil beged almana, you should not take the garment of a widow. So you're not allowed to take a garment if it's from a widow. Hoshalachedim tachpoil, but from other people you are allowed to take a mashkin. Okay, so now man, who are we talking about over here? If we're talking about a balchoiv and we're telling him, this balchoiv, that he's allowed to take this mashkin, and now what the Gemara understands over here is we're talking about going into the borrower's house to take this mashkin. Why? Because we're talking over here about taking a millstone. What a millstone, Rashi says, is usually inside the person's private property, or even inside his house, or the beged by dalmana. It's inside the person's house, and it's saying that these are objects that you're not allowed to take. But other kinds of objects which are similar to this in the person's house, you are allowed to take. So we can't be talking about the lender himself, because it says there in the pasuk that you're not allowed to go into his house to take the mashkin. Don't you think that what we're learning out from these psukim is that you're not allowed to take these kinds of mashkainis that are nefesh, that the person relies on, the person needs for his life? But if it's something that he doesn't need for his life, you are allowed to take. And even if it's in the same place where those things the psukim speak about, which is in the house of the person. So it must be talking about a shliach bezdin that's going into the house. And says the Gemara, Tirgum Rav Papa, Bereder Rav Nachman, Kameder Rav Yosef. Papa, the son of Rav Nachman, said in front of Rav Yosef. Amri Rav Papa, Bereder Rav Yosef, Kameder Rav Yosef. Or Rav Papa, the son of Rav Yosef, said in front of his father, Lo Olam Bebal Chayv. No, we're talking over here, this pasuk is talking about the Balchayv himself, the lender himself, that's going and confiscating these kinds of mashkainis in the house of the person. The question is, the Balchayv is anyways not allowed to go into the house. Why is it saying that he shouldn't go and take these things, a millstone or the beged of an almana? The answer is don't be medayik here. We're talking about someone else. No, what it's coming and saying is true. A Baal Chayv is never allowed to go into a person's private house to take a mashkin. Here, though, if you're taking now a millstone, you over another lav that you took something which he needs for his livelihood. Toshema, the Gemara tries to bring a raya from another brayso mimashma shenema. Pasuk says bachutz tamid, that when you take a mashkin, stand outside. You can't go into his house. Any ideya, do I not know that that the person that you borrowed the money from him, Yoitzi, he's going to be the one that will bring you out the mashkin? It says you have to stand outside. So why? Right there, the pasuk continues and says, V'ha'ish. That's so the continuation of the pasuk over there. It says, B'chutz tamoid, and then V'ha'ish the person that you're collecting the money from him, he'll bring it out. Why does it have to say V'ha'ish that this person will bring it out? It's obvious. L'rabbis shliach bezdin. So the words of the Bryce is, this comes to include V'ha'ish is going on the shliach of the bezdin. So the Gemara explains, when we say here L'Rabbi shliach bezdin, what exactly does this mean? My love, don't you think it means exactly the opposite of what Shmuel said? Shliach bezdin k'loivet. That when the Torah says the word V'ha'ish, it's saying that the shliach of the bezdin is like the borrower himself, that obviously is in his own private house, and the shliach of the bezdin is allowed to go into the loives private house to bring out the mashkin from you. Only the lender is not allowed to go into his house. But V'ha'ish is coming to add that the shliach of the bezdin is allowed to go into his house. Answers the Gemara, no. According to Shmuel, the pshat over here is like shliach bezdin kemalve. The shliach of the bezdin is actually like the lender that's not allowed to go into his house. In other words, the way you're supposed to read this pasuk according to the drasha of the Braisa is that b'chutz tamoid, you stand outside, which refers to the lender, and then v'ha'ish. Then the pasuk adds v'ha'ish that this man, which is the shliach of the bezdin, also stands outside. Kama. And then, only the one that you borrowed the money from, he's the one that brings it out. So the ve'ish goes together with the lender. Right, the Gemara thought to say that you read it b'chutz tamoid, kama, and then ve'ish, and that the ish, which is the shliach of the bezdin, is similar to the loive that can bring it out for you. But now the Gemara answers, no. The ve'ish goes back to the lender, and only only he, the borrower, is the one that can bring it out to you. Another Bryce said, Toshema, the Bryce here says, if you're going to come and take a mashkin, a garment of your friend, so there is where the pasuk says that if it's a garment that he needs for at night, like we mentioned before, let's say a pillow, you have to give him back the pillow to be able to sleep with at night. So who are we talking about? This pasuk is talking about the shliach of bezdin that's taking this mashkin. The Braisa says, you're saying that this is a mashkin that the shliach bezdin is taking, and even there it says that you have to return it to him when he needs it at night. Maybe it's talking about when a Baal Chayv himself, when the lender himself comes and takes the mashkin, then the pasuk is saying here that he has to return it to him when he needs it at night. So the Braisa says that can't be, because regarding the lender himself, the pasuk says he's not allowed to go into the borrower's house to take the mashkin. Over there in that pasuk, it speaks about the lender himself that's not allowed to go into his house. In this pasuk, when it says that he's taking the mashkin from the friend, who's it talking about? This pasuk is referring to the shliach bezdin that is allowed to go into the borrower's house, and here the pasuk is saying he could go into his house and take the mashkin, but he has to return it to him at night when he needs it. So over here in this Braisa, you see very, very clearly the Braisa is saying that the lender himself is not allowed to go into the borrower's house, but the shliach bezdin is allowed to go into his house and take the mashkin, and then he has to return it at night when he needs it. This is a clear raya against Shmuel. Says the Gemara, Tanoihi. You're right, we're going to have to say that this statement of Shmuel, that the shliach bezdin is not allowed to go into the private house, is a machlokes Tanoi. And here the Gemara brings two braises that clearly speak about this. One braise says, the Tanya braise says, Shliach bezdin shabola mashkanai, Shliach bezdin that's coming to take a mashkin, lo yikanes lebeis le mashkanai, Elohim b'bachutz. He has to stand outside, v'halo moitzi le mashkin, and the borrower brings out the mashkin. Shenema, because the pasuk says, bachutz tamoid v'ha'ish. So here, this Braisa is dashing, like we said before, that the word v'ha'ish, which is extra, goes together with the beginning of the pasuk. B'chutz tamay, just like the lender himself has to stay outside. V'ha'ish, that refers to the shliach of the bezdin, he also has to stand outside. It's one Braisa. But v'tanya idach, and another Braisa we learned, not like Shmuel. If the lender himself wants to take a mashkin, he's not allowed to go into the house to take the mashkin. He has to wait outside. The borrower brings out the mashkin. He has to stand outside. But the shliach bezin, if you're taking a shliach of bezin to bring the mashkin for you, then he is allowed to enter into his house to take the mashkin. According to this brayse, you darshan the word v'ha'ish together with the borrower. V'ha'ish means that just like the borrower himself, so too the shliach of the bezin can bring the mashkin from his house. Okay, so here we see that the statement of Shmuel is a machlokes in the two brayses. Now the Gemara continues on with a different subject, bringing from the continuation of this brayse. You're not allowed to take a mashkin, an object that he needs for food, like the example we had before regarding the millstones that you need to grind your flour. And when you're taking a mashkin, even if your loan is a huge loan and you want to now come and confiscate all kinds of things that this person owns, but you have to leave him 2 beds, and you have to also leave him a spread on the bed, a matzah la'asher, a felt spread on the bed if he's a rich person, and mitta, 2 beds that is, umapatz la'ani, and a straw spread that's on the bed for a poor person. That's why you have to leave him, even if you are trying to confiscate all kinds of things for your loan. You don't have to leave for the person what he needs for his wife, for his family. You have to leave him what he needs to be able to live for himself. But the furniture, whatever he needs for his wife and family, that's not your obligation to keep for him. Just like we are misader, meaning we have to organize and see what it is that this person needs for himself. When you come to take a mashkin for a loan, you have to leave him for what he needs for his life. So kach misaderim be'erechin. The same halacha applies by erechin. When a person makes a certain pledge to hekdesh to give a certain amount of money to hekdesh, and then he can't afford it. Can't afford to give that to hekdesh. So the gizbar, the shliach of the hekdesh, comes and confiscates all your possessions for this pledge that you made to hekdesh. But the gizbar has to now come and evaluate what it is that you need to use for yourself to be able to live. And Machud, Rashi brings the pasuk in the middle of Ne'akayim, and Machu me'ekacha. So over there, if the person is poor, you have to, the middle of Ne'akayim, the Kayin has to evaluate and leave him, because he's poor, what he needs for himself. So just like over there, by Erechin, the halacha is that you have to leave him for himself. That's really the source of this halacha. It's learned out by the psukim in Mashkin, that it speaks about Mashkin in the Torah. It doesn't speak about leaving him what he needs for his life. Right? But we learned this out from what it says by Erechin. Just like over there, when he has to give a hektish, nevertheless you leave what he needs for his own life, and you don't have to leave for his family, only for himself. Similar over here, we say regarding a mashkin that when you evaluate what it is that you leave for him, you have to leave for him only what he needs for himself and not what he needs for his family. And also, there's a difference between a person that's rich and a person that's poor. You learn that all out from Erechin. Okay, so now the Gemara will explain the details in the second half of this brayse. Mamar, what did the brayse say over here? That noisin mita umatza laosher. Sorry, I skipped a little part of the Gemara here. Let me go back a second. Okay. Oh, so the Gemara over here asks, Klapilai. Sorry, yeah, that's where I'm holding. Okay, Klapilai. The Gemara asks that really the Brayse should have said what it just said in the opposite. Why should have it said in the opposite? Because Ikke Sidor be'erching siv. Where is the Torah write this halacha that you have to see and organize for this person? Or Rashi has another pshat. The word that misader means to leave for him. Yeah, we have to leave over for him. Where does it say this halacha to leave for him? It says it by Erechin. That's the source. So why are we saying that just like you have to leave for him by a mashkin, so too you have to leave for him by Erechin? It's the other way around. Elas Gemara says you're right. Just like you have to be misader be'erechin, that you leave for him what he needs, kach misader be'balchayv. So too you have to leave for him here as well by a person that's a lender that's taking a mashkin. You have to leave for him like by Erechin. Okay, now, what did it say in the Brayse? Noise mita umita. You have to leave for him 2 beds. Umatza la'oshir, and also a felt spread on the bed if he's rich. Mita 2 beds. Umapetz la'oni, and a reed spread if he's a poor person. Okay, so now Laman, who are we leaving 2 beds for? Why isn't one enough? Is the second bed either for his wife or for his children or Lubnaisa, his daughters? But the Brayse clearly said all you have to leave for him is what he needs for himself, not for his wife or children. So what's the 2 beds all about? Elo, says the Gemara, idividi lididei. Both beds are for the person himself. Tarti lamali. Why does he need two beds? The answer is chada, the achal. One bed is that he sits on it when he eats, and the chada, the zagala. Another bed is where he lies down on it when he goes to sleep. And why do you need two? Why can't he sleep and eat in the same bed? So the answer is kid Shmuel, like what Shmuel has said. The Amma Shmuel said, Kol mili yadaina asusayu. For everything, I know what the healing for it is. Shmuel was a doctor. We had before here in this Masech, we had a few places. Here we had before the Gemara says that Shmuel was the doctor of Rebbe, Rabbeinu HaKadosh. So Shmuel says, I have a healing for everything. Labar mahani klas. Besides, for these three things, if a person behaves this way, I don't have any healing for it. One is man a person that eats unripe dates and it's on an empty stomach, on an empty heart. So that's very harmful. I can't heal this. And also a person that ties a moist rope that's made from flax on his waist. So that's something that will harm a person. And also, a person that eats bread in his bed, and then he doesn't at least walk 4 amas before he goes and lies down to sleep. If he eats in his bed and sleeps right there, then it's harmful as well. So therefore, we have to leave this person 2 beds. So he should have 1 bed to eat on and 1 bed to walk to go to sleep.
So I can't just walk and then
go back to his bed, because then he might forget it. He's in his bed. He's not going to get out of his bed. But if that bed is not made for sleeping, he'll get up and go to his bed. Tani Kamed Rav Nachman. Going back to the halachas of our Mishnah regarding the mashkin, what you're allowed to take, what you're not allowed to take. So there's a Tana that taught in front of Rav Nachman. Just like when it comes to the erchen by hektish, that you have to leave a person what he needs for his life. So too by a balchayv, you have to be mesader, you have to leave him what he needs after you take the mashkin. Amalei, so Rav Nachman asked him on this. You're even allowed to go and sell even these items that the person needs for himself. You're allowed to go and sell them and use the money that you make of this to pay up the loan. Okay, the Gemara is going to explain in a second what Rav Nachman's question here is. But Rav Nachman is asking, you're allowed to sell this. Do we leave it for him? Do we leave it behind that he should be able to keep it for himself, to be able to for what he needs for his life? So the Gemara right away asks, what was Rav Nachman's question? Is this true that you're allowed to sell these things in order to be able to get the payment of the loan? But Vatnan, didn't the Mishnah say, Machzer es akar balayla, that a pillow, you can't sell it. You have to give it back at night for him to be able to sleep on it. And you have to give him back the plow to work with during the day. So the Gemara answers, Tane kerab Shimon Gamliel Tane Kamei. The Tane that taught this brayse in front of Rav Nachman, he taught it in the name of Rab Shimon Gamliel. He says, Rab Shimon Gamliel taught that you have to leave him the things that he needs for his life. So v'hachi kamale, and therefore Rav Nachman is asking this Tana or this person that taught in the name of Rab Shimon ben Gamliel this halacha hashte le Rab Shimon ben Gamliel zavuni mezavnina le. Rab Shimon ben Gamliel holds that even the things that the person needs, like a pillow and the things that he needs for his livelihood, still you're allowed to go and after 30 days and sell it. So duri mesadrina le. So you're telling me that you have to leave this over for the person because he needs it for himself to live? That's not it. We learned in the Mishnah of even for himself, we only leave it for him up to 30 days. But after this, you can go and sell it in a bezin to get the payment of your loan. Okay, so therefore, if you can sell it, for sure, we can't say that you leave it for him. You can sell it. So the Gemara asks on this, Umimai, how do you know that according to Rab Shimon Gamliel, even the basic needs that a person needs for himself, you can totally sell it to get the payment for your loan? Umimai, how do you know that's how you learn what Rab Shimon Gamliel said? At the Chikam, Rab Shimon Gamliel, Zavuni, Legamri Kama, when Rab Shimon Gamliel says that after 30 days, you can sell what the borrower has in order to get the payment for your loan, that means you can totally sell everything. Maybe Rav Shimon Gamliel just meant to say as follows: until 30 days, give him back the pillow, give him back what he needs for the night or for the daytime, what he needs for the day, as the Tanakh of the Mishnah said. Then even after that, you can't totally sell it. Mehadele lemai dechazile. You have to give him back what's basic of what he needs to be able to live. Umazavninon mai dele chazile. And then you will be able to sell what he doesn't deserve, what he doesn't. It's not mamish a basic need that he needs. So Rashi says, for example, if he has very expensive garments, so then you can sell those garments and buy him cheap garments. And the difference, the money, that you can take for pay. But to sell completely, to take away mamish, that he shouldn't have the clothing that he needs, or the basic things that he needs, like the Tanakama here in the Braisa said, the beds that he needs to sleep on, maybe you can't take away completely from him. So that's why the Tanav here was saying that you have to be misader for him. Even according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, you can't totally take it away. So the Gemara says, no, that's not true. If you're going to come and make this distinction according to Rav Shimon Gamliel, that you have to leave for him the basic needs of what he needs, so then there's nothing that's not going to be considered a basic need that he needs. Why is that? The Omar Abaye said, Rav Shimon Gamliel, V'Rav Shimon, V'Rabbi Shmuel, V'Rabbi Akiva, Kula Svira Lahu, all of these Tanaim say, Kol Yisrael b'nei Malachim Heim. All Yidden are like princes. And therefore, if a Yid is accustomed to having something which is expensive, which is luxury, you can't then come and say, oh, it's a luxury item, let me sell it, and let me give it to him back in a basic version. And the difference between the luxury and the basic version, that's what I'll collect. No, if a Yid is used to a luxury item, that becomes like a basic need for him. Why? Because every Yid is like B'nai Malachim, like princes. Therefore, it must be that Rav Shimon Gamliel held that at a certain point, after 30 days, you can sell it all. You can't start making a distinction what's a basic need and what's not. And here the Gemara brings the source. Where do we see that all these Tanaim hold that for a Yid, even things that seem to be luxuries, but for a Yid, if he's accustomed to this, it's considered to be for him like a basic need, like a prince. Rav Shimon Gamliel, the source of Rav Shimon Gamliel is in a Mishnah in Shabbos. The Mishnah there discusses halachas of muktzeh. It's not. The Mishnah says, lo yasaluf, you're not allowed to touch luf, which is some kind of beans or legumes, and v'lo yasachardel, and also not mustard seeds. And the reason is because these are not useful. They're not edible on Shabbos. So therefore they're muktzeh. But Rav Shimon Gamliel matter belov. Rav Shimon Gamliel says you are allowed to handle luf, these legumes, on Shabbos. The reason is because it can be used as food to feed ravens. Now, even though ravens is not something that normal people have, who has ravens? So Rashi here says that they're used for people that want to have pet birds, people like B'nai Malachim that have these ravens that they play with. But nevertheless, for any regular Yid, the luf is considered to be something that's used for the ravens. Every Yid is on the level of a prince that maybe he wants to have a raven, so therefore it's not muktzah. So we see Rav Shimon Gamliel held this idea. Another Rav Shimon, also Rav Shimon we see there in the Gemara in Shabbos, the Tanan, the Mishnah there says, this is also a halacha of Shabbos, where a person is not allowed to take any medicine or use anything that's for healing on Shabbos. There's the gzeira that you may come to grind and make the medicine. So it says they're b'nei malachim. So if you're talking about people that are princes, sachin shemen vered al gabi makisayim b'Shabbos, they are allowed to apply rose oil on their wounds on Shabbos. Even though seemingly it's being used as for medical purposes, they're allowed because princes they're accustomed to use this expensive luxury rose oil anytime, not only for healing. Rav Shimon says, "Kol Yisrael b'nei malachim." If that's the case, the same applies to every Yid because all Yidden are like princes. Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva, where do you see that Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva say that all Yidden are like princes? The Tanya, as it says in the Braisa, Harei shehoyu noishim by 1,000 zuz. A person that a loan of 1,000 zuz is being demanded to be collected from him. And v'lavash itztele basmeya mana. And he's wearing a very expensive garment, which is the value of 100 mana. Mafshita naisa mimenu. You can remove that very expensive garment that he's wearing. Umalbisha maisai itzle haruyalai. And instead, give him back a very simple, cheap garment in order to get this loan paid up. He doesn't have to wear such a luxury garment if he owes money. But both Rabbi Shmuel and Rabbi Akiva said about this, no, you can't do this. Kol Yisrael ru'uyin la'isa itztala. All Yidden, if they're wearing this expensive luxury garment, all Yidden are deserving. It's befitting for them to wear this luxury garment because of the fact that they're very rich, or they're called b'nei malachim. That is, all Yidden are princes. Okay. Now the Gemara goes back to the point that it was trying to say before. In the beginning, before we came to this conclusion that you can't distinguish by a yid between a luxury garment or a cheap garment, because for a yid that's used to a luxury garment, he's like a ben melech, he's a prince. But before we came to this conclusion, what was our thought before? The Yavle Maidachazile, that you give him what he's deserving, which is a basic garment, and you sell the luxury garment that he does not need. So the Gemara asks, there were two examples that the Mishnah spoke about. The Mishnah spoke about a pillow, a garment, and the Mishnah also spoke about a plow. So how do you apply that over here? When it comes to a pillow or a blanket, so chazile de beni beni. So you could say maybe he has a very expensive pillow, a down pillow or something that's very expensive, and you exchange it for him with a very cheap pillow. So that we can understand how you do this. But when it comes to a plow, lamai chazia. How do you exchange it? A plow is a plow. So what does it mean that you take away this plow, you give him a different one? So Rava Barabe says, Machresha de Kaspa. No, maybe a person has a silver plow, and this is something which is very expensive, and you exchange it for him for a basic iron plow. According to Taisvis, this plow that the Mishnah talks about is not talking about a plow that you use in a field. It's talking about some kind of a comb that a person uses for his body. And Bechlal, Taisvis before says, when it speaks about the fact that you're taking a plow from the person, we learned before that you're not allowed to take millstones from a person because he needs this for his food. A plow, which you're using to plant for your food, so according to Taisvis, you're not allowed to take that either. So the Mishnah has to be talking about some kind of a comb, and it's a silver comb that a person uses. So Rav Chaga asks, this is a basic question over here, beneged to these limitations that you're saying that he's not allowed to go and take these things from him that he needs for his parnasa, that he needs for his basic livelihood. That let the lender say, Lav alai karamis. It's not my responsibility to make sure that you have a livelihood. You owe me money, so pay me money. The fact that I'm taking away your parnasa, so there's people that will give you tzedakah. There's organizations for that purpose, but you owe me money. Amalei Abaye answers him, Ivre. No, yes, the truth is, Alei Karamis, that the Torah does place it upon the lender, that it's his responsibility to see to it that he should have his basic needs. Shimshanema, because when the pasuk speaks about the mashkin, it says that you return to him what he needs, his pillow at night, and whatever he needs to use. And the pasuk there says, Uluchati tzedakah, that this tzedakah lies upon you, even though he owes you the money and you could take the mashkin, but nevertheless, it's your responsibility to give him the basic needs that he needs to be able to live.